Meeting of the Menifee City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Mayor Mann.
Present.
Mayor, I will note that Mr. Furman is out on an excused absence.
Yes, and for the benefit of the public and my colleagues, I have the authority from Mr. Furman. Councilmember Furman had a little accident on his ranch, and he's going to be laid up for at least this meeting and maybe another. But the extent of his medical condition is not for us to share with you. That'll be for him to share with you. And we're not legally obligated to do that, but we wish Tom the very best for his recovery. And there's been other council members in the past in the history of the city that have had those medical conditions, and so we're going to honor those privacies, and we're going to move on smartly. And when Tom gets back and he's ready to share with you, we're going to let him share with you what his condition is. All right? So with that being said, Pastor Troy Ulmer of First Baptist Church, are you here tonight, sir? All right. Please share our words of inspiration.
With hearing that and knowing that, Lord, we just want to lift up Tom Furman to you. Just pray for a healing. Give the doctors wisdom as they care for him. Lord, we also want to commit this council to you. You've raised up leadership. Give them wisdom, discernment as they facilitate and conduct meetings, not both now and on into the future. We pray for the body that's representative of the city. Pray for them as they share their concerns and their hearts. May their heart and spirit be right. Lord, this is your town, your city. You raised up people. You raised up leadership. Lord, may we unite our hearts and move forward, and we just commit this meeting to you in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, sir. And we have tonight the flag salute to be conducted by the Menifee Explorer Post. Commander, please proceed. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, gentlemen. Council, we have a presentation to make tonight, and if you would join me up front.
Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, City staff, I thank you for the opportunity to recognize the City of Menifee Explorer Post 315. Just a little history. Post 315 actually originated in 2003 in Canyon Lake. In 2010, the post was co-sponsored by both the City of Menifee and Canyon Lake. By 2011, Explorer Post 315 became fully sponsored by the City of Menifee and remains so today. Explorer Post 315 remains exceptionally active with 20 members assisting with the city's annual birthday celebration, the 4th of July celebration, DUI checkpoints, crime scene searches, and numerous other events. In June of this year, the Post traveled Las Vegas for the National Explorer Conference known as XCon. As try as we may, they won't change that name. This is an annual competition hosted by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. The purpose of the Explorer Conference is to provide training and competitive events to both explorers and their advisors. This year's competition was attended by 37 Explorer posts from California to New York. At the competition, there are 5 team events, 6 individual walk-up events. These events include, but are not limited to, active shooter, vehicle stop, downed officer, suspicious person stop, crime scene response, shoot, no shoot, physical training, and team challenge. The explorers from Post 315 who attended this year's competition were Lieutenant James Huger, Lieutenant Dominic Del Bono, Corporal William Schlosser, Corporal Matthew Mejia, Explorer Jose Urquida, Explorer Christian Urquida, Explorer Myra Diaz, Explorer Valerie Lopez, and Explorer Yazel Reyes. These explorers were accompanied and trained by Deputy Roger Doyle, Deputy Renee Casada, and Sheriff Service Officer Jennifer Motes. Menifee Explorer Post 315 works hard throughout the year, training and discipline to prepare for this competition. This was their 4th appearance at XCon. At this year's competition, we are pleased to report that the Menifee Explorers took first place in the suspicious person stop. The specific details of this stop include suddenly being confronted by a possible security guard who had another individual at gunpoint. The explorers safely disarmed both the security guard and the other subject, who was also armed with a gun in his waistband. They safely placed the suspect into custody and located the concealed weapon on his person. Our explorers were the only ones to do this correctly. By handling the scenario correctly, our explorers were awarded the first place. The 2 specific explorers who handled this stop and took first place were Post Lieutenants James Huger and Dominic Del Bono. I am sorry to report that Lieutenant James Huger is not with us tonight, but Dominic Del Bono is. Please join me in congratulating these outstanding young men and women, to include their advisors, for their dedication to the city of Menifee and their great success at this year's Explorer Conference.
Come on up. Everybody, come on up. Stand to be recognized for your achievement.
And just so everybody can see,
Right up here.
that's what first place looks like.
All right. Judge, can you come up here and be with us and present the trophy? And we'll do the certificates later. There are no words that I can possibly add to your accolades, except to say that, you know, with everything that's going on in America today, don't you think that America is going to be in good hands with these young people?
Absolutely.
Between the military and the school districts and everything that happens in public life, and these young men and women are the forefront to the thin blue line that already exists between the perpetrators and those who commit crimes and all of the rest of us. And so for everything that you do, and Captain Judge, please present. The fact that you won this award is extraordinary. Well done. You have made Menifee proud, and we are very, very grateful for each and every one of you. Congratulations to each and every one of you. Well done.
You're not going to get to keep it because it's going outside in the lobby. Congratulations, Menifee Post 315.
All right. Congratulations. Well
Good
done.
work. Good work.
Good job.
Like I said,
Yeah.
easy come, easy go. It's going in the lobby.
That's me.
I feel like I can retire now. In all seriousness, I mean, with young men and women like that protecting us out there and seeking to enter public safety realm, well done. Okay, on to our next presentation, which is Mr. City Manager. I think we have a report on signal improvements for the city.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I wanted to do a traffic signal improvement update for you while the majority of folks were here so the public can hear the comment. We'll also have a more in-depth one at the city manager's update at the end of the meeting. But we have identified 3 signal improvement areas, Aldergate Drive and Menifee Road, Bradley Road and Holland Road, Garbani Road and Antelope. They're all funded through developer impact fees and or developer deposits. I'll start with Aldergate Drive and Menifee Road. This is at the entrance of the newly constructed Menifee Missing Link. The design will be completed by December. Construction will start in March of next year and it'll be completed by June. This is right by Freedom Crest Elementary School. Bradley Road and Holland Road, the design will be completed at the same times, December 14 and then March and June. This is a highly anticipated and expected light and an improvement at Holland and Bradley near Paloma Valley High School. And finally, the Garbani Road, Antelope Road, the design is already completed. It's pending right-of-way acquisition by the city, and it takes about 3 months after the right-of-way acquisition for the start of construction. This is another highly anticipated and requested, also a public safety issue at Antelope and Garbani, as with our other 2 signals. Just wanted to share those updates with you ahead of time, and Jonathan, your city engineer, will have a full update later in the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. August.
Mr. Johnson, just for edification of the people who are out here in the audience, and a lot of people don't know it, but could you give them an idea how much these, I realize there's different categories of lights, but could you give an idea how much they cost? And
Each signalized intersection is typically $200,000 to $225,000 up to $250,000, depending on the style that's in the ground, how many ways, if it's a 4-way, 2-way, 3-way, how many turn lanes are involved, how much right-of-way acquisition. So if it's a simple signalized intersection, which is not too simple, they could run as low as $190, but that's the bare bones bottom, no left turn, just a through. So these are costly items. And that's why it takes a little bit of a long time to get the funds necessary to do that. But you'll see an item on the agenda for an approval of $811,500 for those necessary signal improvements on your agenda tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, and well done, city engineer and your team for improving public safety in these areas, and we'll see if we can get those approved. On to the approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any modifications to the minutes from July 2nd? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. On to agenda approval. Madam Clerk, do we have any modifications to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Your Honor. Item 11.2 is being pulled this evening at the request of staff and will be renoticed.
Very well. Thank you very much. Any other modifications?
No, sir, otherwise as posted.
Any objections? Agenda is approved. On to public comments. Madam Clerk, call the first speaker.
Yes, sir. Claudia Greenwood.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff, and residents of Menifee. My name is Claudia Greenwood, and you probably all know me as the person that comes up here and says, Sun City Canine Adoptions is having a fundraiser, a garage sale, a golf tournament, or an Oktoberfest. But this evening I have something else I need to share with all of you. I'm going to read it so I don't miss anything. Sun City Canine Adoptions is happy to announce that Retrievers and Friends of Southern California, known as RFSC, has purchased the property that we have been using to help rescue dogs and cats over the years. When the property became available for sale, we were thrilled that this local nonprofit organization would be the new owners. RFSC has been helping the animals of our valley for the past 24 years and has successfully placed thousands of animals in need with homes for life. Along with their rescue, education, and adoption programs, RFSC has also been working diligently throughout Southwest Riverside County to significantly reduce animal overpopulation numbers with their low-cost spay-neuter mobile vet clinic. We are confident that this new change will continue to bring loving families and pets together. RFSC has agreed to provide care for any of our dogs and cats that are on the property when escrow closed as of July 1st. We hope that all of you will welcome RFSC. We encourage everyone in the community who have helped and supported us over the years to get to know this wonderful organization. You can visit RFSC at their website and see what our new friends are all about. Donations can be made online or mailed to their P.O. Box. Sun City Canine Adoptions is going to maintain their 501c3 nonprofit, and we will also be accepting donations to be used toward low-cost spay and neuter clinics for low-income seniors. So we really want to stay out there, but we do not physically have a shelter at this point. And we also have a new mailing address. You are what makes it possible to us to give precious animals the safe and loving homes they deserve. Sun City Canine Adoptions and Retrievers and Friends of Southern California, thank you for your dedication, love, and care. With your permission, I have some copies of this notification, if we could have them maybe at the front in the reception area for anybody, because the P.O. Box numbers and stuff are on
Sure,
here.
just give those to the city clerk, and we'll be
Okay.
happy to put them out
Okay.
in the foyer.
Okay.
Mr. August?
Claudia, you mean no more garage sales, right? I think everybody's
Oh,
pretty
thank
happy
God, no.
about that. We go, but the golf tournaments were really fun, so that was all.
Well, you know, we may possibly still do those for the benefit of our spay and neuters for low-income seniors.
Well-
That may not go away, but the garage sales definitely are gone.
That's good. We had the first garage sales at my house, the first few garage sales at my house on Thornhill Drive, and then we moved them down to Pete and Maria's, and I can't say that I was sorry to see them go. It took me 6 weeks to clean up from those garage sales. But anyway, I've worked with Sun City Canine prior to you, and it's been many years, probably 15 years, and I met Elizabeth and I want to, first of all, you can pass on my thanks and all of our thanks to Elizabeth and to you and to Marcia and Pete and Marie for the fine years of service that you've given to all the animals in the city of Menifee. And I hope our FP will carry on in what was a wonderful tradition for you and Sun City Canine. So I want to thank you, and I'm sure we're not going to give up on the animals. We'll still continue to
Oh,
work with them.
absolutely not. And actually, she has, she's going to make improvements. She's able to, she has another shelter in Lake Elsinore, and she's already moved the cats and the small dogs to her facility, which is climate controlled, which we just had fans and misters. So in the long run, I think the animals are going to probably benefit more than, not with the love, but with the facility itself. So
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Claudia.
very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Next speaker, please.
Gary Luthner? Luthner.
Give me a chance to get off the chair. Hi, I like to ask why all our bus stops don't have covers on them in case it rains or, the older people can't sit in the sun. None of the bus stops don't have no covers whatsoever. Or something to cover up. In case it does rain, they got places to stand.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton serves on the RTA, and I'll let him address that, okay?
As with everything, some of that's a budgetary concern, but I know that the RTA and city management here will get together. The funds are not available to cover them all because you're not just talking about Menifee. And by the way, the RTA is the second largest transportation system in the United States of America. So they got a big job. That doesn't mean, however, that when a legitimate squeaky wheel comes up, and particularly an old-timer veteran, that we're not sympathetic. And so, Rob, if you might look into that to see if there are at least some specific sites where we might get some coverage. I'm sure the RTA would want to be cooperative on that. And thank you, sir. Thank you for your service.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Last year, about a year and a half ago, staff worked with the Menifee Citizens Advisory Committee and did a look at all of the bus stops within the city, and we had provided that to RTA, and we'll follow up on that. You're right, there's limited funds. I think we identified 3 or 4 different stops that we would hope to have not only required shelters on, but also lights at night. There's a few stops out there in some rural areas that really need those new illuminated lights, so we'll follow up on that again.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Next speaker, please.
Rosemary Elwright.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to address the council. Mayor Mann, as president of the Sun City Civic Association, my sphere of influence certainly is not as wide as yours. I have the governing documents that guide our particular area, the Sun City community of Menifee. Our area has many, many health and safety concerns. I think some of you have been apprised recently of the speeding issue, particularly on Augusta. It's become a real safety concern for our seniors who are out walking their pets. I know the city has done their part. They've put the electronic speed sign up there. Stop signs don't do much to control traffic. Speed bumps might. That might get your attention. There's another problem that is looming its head here in the core area of Sun City, and it's again something that our association cannot do anything about. We are becoming a mecca for homeless in the area. I've had friends tell me that there's homeless sleeping on the golf course behind the condos on Cherry Hills. There recently, just 2 days ago, there was a mattress pulled out onto the former King's Inn property. My dentist, whose office is in the Apple Medical Building on Bradley Road, complained to me about the number of homeless that are sleeping behind that area and using all the surrounding area around that building as a public toilet. I mean, they've had to clean human waste from their back doors and everything else. And he said, consequently, he's losing business by people that are not wanting to be around that environment. So I implore, if there's anything that the city can do to help with this problem, to please. We have concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Katie Benier.
Well, it seems our city's doing a fine job because the homeless thing has to do with them allowing all these people in and halfway houses and the likes. Anyway, that's another topic. I'm here tonight because I speak every time. I've been here every meeting, I think, for 4 years. And you know what? I'm really tired of being put down and discredited every time I'm done speaking. And Mayor Mann, you're guilty of that, and Mr. Edgerton, you're guilty of that. Every meeting, you wait until I sit down and discredit me. You don't have a question when I'm standing here and I can answer it. You wait to discredit me. Mayor Mann, last meeting, you stated that QVEC, a committee you have deep ties to, received medical information regarding students who attend Menifee Unified School District. It's my understanding that the HEPA law protects all medical information from being distributed to the public, and only by written request to the CDC by environmental health is the legal avenue. Are you telling me that Menifee Unified School District is releasing medical information to you and your group without going through the legal channels? That's against the law and could be reported to the state Attorney General's office.
Well, I can't let that go, and I'm sorry you're sitting down, but I'm going to address that. No, sit. You're done. Your
The red
time
light
is
didn't
over.
go off. That's the thing you pull every
Next
damn
speaker,
meeting.
please. Next
Excuse
speaker.
me.
Next speaker, please. Madam Clerk.
Grant Yoders.
Good evening, Grant Yoders, community of Sun City. I've missed the last couple of meetings, so I just want to take this opportunity to address a couple of previous agenda items. Agenda item 12.6, June 4th meeting. Initiative measure, compensation of mayor, to be added to the November ballot. My question, how many thousands of taxpayer dollars is it going to cost to have this item put on the ballot so the mayor can get an increase in pay? If the council members had not increased their pay last year, this ballot measure would not be necessary. And since the council members did vote themselves an increase in pay, why don't you each just donate back 25% to the mayor, and it won't cost the city any additional money, and the mayor will then be compensated more than the other council members. Agenda item 10.5, May 21st. Prima facie speed limits on certain streets in Menifee. I agree that a survey was needed to determine the current and accurate speed on the streets, but the critical speed or defined as the 85th percentile speed is not always the most accurate factor. I say this because there is one street that needs to be revisited because of the characteristics of the street. The street is Marietta Road from Chambers North to McLaughlin. Current speed limit 50, proposed change to 45, suggest 40 to confirm with speed from Newport Road north to Chambers. I say 40 because if you lived on this street as I do, you would know why. There are churches, a funeral home, canine adoption, gated communities, and access to other communities. There are many blind spots when accessing Marietta Road, and even with a 40-mile speed, it will still be a touch and go. At the entrance to my community, Sun Meadows, in the past 6 years, there have been 5 documented accidents because of a blind spot to the north. When accessing Marietta Road from Rouse, you have to venture almost into the traffic lane because of the blind spots to the north caused by street parking in front of the funeral home. It was ironic that on the night of the second reading of this ordinance, there was an accident at the 4-way stop at Chambers and Murrieta. Going too fast, run the stop sign. The next day, Thursday, an accident in front of the funeral home. A rollover, speed, and blind spot to the north. On Friday, accident in front of canine adoptions, again caused by speed. I propose that this speed change be re-evaluated and revisited. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. With respect to the ballot measure that the city council put up, there's no added cost for that to go up on the for the voters. And the fact the matter is that there was some flawed ballot language as it was originally written and put before the voters. And so this is just a correction. It actually upholds the will of the voters from the previous vote to have that mechanism put in place to where everybody's compensation is tied to the population of the city. So I just wanted to share that with you. Next speaker, please.
Mike, I believe it's Huckel.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Manning, City of Menifee. My name is Mike Huckel, and I have approached the city on some of their ordinances regarding LED signs. And it was on my understanding that the ordinance does allow for the signs, and apparently there's some confusion with staff on if it's a minor plot plan or a major plot plan and how much the fee would cost to submit the site plan. So in my conversations with staff, it was suggested that I speak with Mr. Leclerc on what we can do to work together on this. And what I've proposed is to, instead of paying the $10,000 per site application fee that staff had proposed that I do, I would like the council to consider putting on their agenda or consider working together with me where we would pay the city a fee of $6,500 per sign structure every year. And in addition to that, we would offer the city some free advertising and some other nonprofits and community events throughout the city, like the Sun City Canine, the garage sales, the golf outings, your National Night Out. These would be at each end of the city on the 215 on the north end and on the south end, and it would be state-of-the-art electronics signs. So that's my request. Thank you.
Sir, just a quick question. Are you the gentleman that keeps calling me about the signage issue from the 616 area code, which
That's
is
me.
Michigan?
Yes,
And so you have a cell phone from
I do.
Michigan area, but you live in the Southern California area?
That's correct.
Okay.
I just
And-
moved out here a year and a half ago. My son moved out here, and so I'm his dad, so I follow him out.
Just curious, I mean, have you actually filed for a permit or an application for any of these signs?
I was
Yet?
rejected when I came into.
That's not what I asked.
I tried
Did you
to.
file for an application yet?
I have not.
Okay. Mr. Edgerton?
I'm not up on this particular
Okay.
issue. I know signage in any city can become rather controversial. Do you represent a specific business? I mean,
Yes.
a business here in Menifee, or are you representing a larger business which is desiring the ability to put signs throughout the city?
I am the owner of Huckel Advertising. I'm licensed in the state of California to do outdoor advertising. So I work with my own company.
Okay,
And I
thank you.
work together with Lamar Advertising as well.
Thank you, sir, very much. I appreciate you answering our questions. I appreciate you coming and speaking to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Grant Beckland.
Hi, Grant Beckland. I was here a month ago, and I presented a petition of 110 neighbors and community members in the Briggs, Leon, Scott area, considering.
Which is outside of the city of Menifee.
Correct. It's within your proposed sphere of influence.
But it's outside of the
out
city of Menifee.
And I have an exhibit, if you have an overhead, I can show you. Okay, anyway. Yes, it is outside the city.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead and proceed, and then I'm going to share a couple comments with you.
So you had suggested last meeting after I spoke that to wait to see what would happen this month with LAFCO. And I
Correct.
checked with them, and they are continuing that item till September because they didn't have time to do the staff reports. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing is just to let you know that this project is 800 units. It's in an area now of 20-acre parcels. It will greatly disrupt that entire rural area with what is proposed as 6,000 square foot lots, six to 800 lots. And we have the opportunity to have it annexed into the city and protect it and add it to your city's rural stock. But the issue is timing, because once the applicant actually submits this application, he's going to have to do an EIR. And I'm thinking it's going to be 10 to 12 months for him to get to a planning commission and then the board. And according to LAFCO, it's 5 to 6 months to do an annexation. So I'm not pushing you, but I'm just asking that if you consider having it on an agenda item to discuss doing this so we can get the process started, because if we don't make it before the board approves it and you want to annex it later, you're stuck with that project, and I'm not sure the city wants this type of project.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Denver?
Mr. City Manager, how are we doing on the sphere of influence and/or annexation of property to the east of town?
Mr. Denver, it is as Mr. Beckland stated, we do have a hearing in front of LAFCO. I believe it was for July 25th or 24th. The staff report is not ready, so they have notified us that they're pushing it to September. I planned on attending that meeting anyway to see kind of the process, but it was going to be a review of our municipal services review and an opportunity for us to submit and discuss amongst the council policy decision to proceed with a sphere of influence study.
Mr. Richardson?
This particular issue, some folks asked me to attend a meeting, I guess the Monteleone, whatever the pronunciation is.
Monteleone Meadows.
And Monteleone, and this was about a week and a half ago or so, and the place was packed with. I met that gentleman that's now at the speaker lectern there, and but there were a load of Menifee people there who were concerned about the high-density impact and what it was going to have on traffic and what the problems were going to be for Menifee. This gentleman sent me an email and asked me if I wouldn't put it on the item on the next agenda as far as annexation. I'd be happy to do that. My concern is there are so many legal and political ramifications in something like that. And Rob, Mr. City Manager, it sounds to me like you're already on it, but I'm assuming that's also a policy decision by the council if they want to proceed. Would there be any good or any harm in putting this on a subsequent agenda for discussion of the item? And I'm not aware. It's not a rhetorical question.
Okay, I'll try not to give you a rhetorical answer.
Okay.
There will need to be a policy decision based on the council on where the sphere of influence study would go, what portions of the city would we like to extend our borders to and have some influence over. So a discussion at any point, obviously as we move forward with our application, I'm going to need that policy decision from you to go forward with that application. So the discussion on the sphere of influence now or 6 months from now, the policy decision is the important part for me.
Well, I don't have a clue as to how the majority of the council feels, but would it, in your opinion, be enlightening to have it agendized for purposes of discussion? I can't see the downside, but it may be there, and so I don't want to get in front of something that has negative implications.
Well, in my opinion, if the council desires to have control outside its current borders, you need to have a discussion about that and find out what that influence would be and where it would be.
And whether or not you should agendize it?
Well, you can't make a decision and give me policy direction if you don't agendize it.
Well, let me step in here for just a minute, because thank you very much, sir, for your, we are very, very mindful of the issue, and that's exactly why our staff has already filled out a municipal services review for those issues, and there's a legal process that we go through. We can't just extend our borders willy-nilly. There's a process. And the fact that Governor Brown has substantially tied our hands with annexation of anything. Now, spheres of influence, planning spheres of influence, that's another matter. But annexation of property and extending our border to the east has been, well, frankly, we've been hogtied by the governor with his legislation in 2011. So with that being said, I mean, we have a municipal services review that is before LAFCO, which is the boundary setting body by law. The Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act of California sets those things in place. And so with those things being said, and the fact that our municipal services review has been moved from July to September, it ain't happening until September, at least in terms of a discussion. Okay? Is that fair? At least you understand the process. Okay, very good. It's only going to go as far as LAFCO will allow us, and the law of the state of California will allow us to move along. Okay? All right. Next speaker. Thank you, Mr. Becklin. Appreciate your comments the 2 times you've been up here.
Those are your last speakers under public comments. Your next speakers on consent.
Okay, very good. I just want to, from the public standpoint, you know, when we have commenters up here at the podium on non-agendized items, we're limited to the amount of dialogue that we can engage in the public versus an agendized item. And then we have a great deal more latitude when it comes to a public hearing. So when we sit up here and we limitedly engage you in your questions, I just want to share with you that we're not able to do all that we would like to do until those things get actually agendized. So with that being said, on to council member updates and comments. Gentlemen? Anybody? Mr. Denver, Mr. Deputy Mayor? Nobody? Okay, I have 2 things. Actually, I have 3 things. If you didn't read the newspaper articles, the city took possession of the K. Ceniceros Senior Center in a ceremony last Friday, and it was a well-attended event, an amazing facility. You now own that as taxpayers of the city of Menifee, and we're going to continue to the extent that we can to deliver those programs and services there at that facility. And it was really a good event. I was very proud to be there and happy to participate. I mentioned earlier that Mr. Furman did have an accident on his ranch, and he is laid up. He's missing this meeting for sure. Who knows how many meetings that he'll miss, but when he comes back, how he comes back, and what he shares with the public, that's up to him. That's not up to us to share with you, but that's why he's not here. He had a little incident on his ranch, and we wish him the best, and our prayers are with him for a speedy recovery. I do want to share, decorum does not allow me to share any campaign things, but I did pull papers to run for re-election for mayor, and the only thing that I want to share as a result of that is I did sign the Code of Fair Campaign Practices, and I would encourage every candidate present and those who may come forward in the future to sign that. And I would also encourage those who are not candidates to engage in the Code of Fair Campaign Practices as we head into the next election cycle. Because you know what? It's not about us individually. It's about all of you. It's about advancing the city of Menifee and everything that it stands for. And that's what this election and that's what subsequent elections should all be about. With that being said, let's move on to the consent calendar. Gentlemen, do we have a motion on the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Do we have speakers on the consent calendar? We have one?
Yes, sir. We have one.
Should we take a motion, or should we allow the speaker first?
Yeah.
Madam Clerk.
First of all, if there are no items being pulled, I believe you should call the speaker first.
Okay.
I would be pulling 2 items off of the consent calendar.
And which ones are those, Deputy Mayor?
10.2 and 10.5.
10.2?
And 10.5.
10.5, and if I might add, because I believe that 10.6 is substantially related to 10.5, I would like to pull 10.6 just for the sake of it going with 10.5. Is that okay with y'all?
That's fine.
All right, is there a motion to approve the balance of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember August.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton,
Aye.
Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, you have the floor for the agenda items 10.2 first.
Right. 10.2, in reference to the warrant register, just a quick comment. I noticed I had a couple of people ask me about it. When you list the credit cards and other than management, there's nobody associated with those credit card costs. Unless there were objection, I would think it would be appropriate when we provide the warrant register to put the name of the person, whomever they are, that's utilizing that credit card so that the public has that information. That's just, and that's the end of that.
Mr. Denver?
Isn't our expenditures individually listed in other parts of the warrant register, other parts of the agenda when we do spend money individually? Isn't this secondary, isn't it mentioned in another place with our names on it?
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Denver. At the end of the warrant register is U.S. Bank credit card detail. It shows not only the last 4 digits of the card, but the date. It shows in reference to whose card was used. And then in the middle, it shows what the purchase was. And then on the right, it shows the total dollar amount in the budget area it's coming from. It would not be that difficult to add a name to that. It's up to you. If you look at the credit card charges there, it says city manager credit charges for the first 10. There's 14 or so for economic development director, and there's a regular city credit card charge for the remaining 20 or so items.
Did I hear you say that our names are not mentioned? Like when we go to conferences and such, we don't have it broken out individually and have credit cards as well as all other expenditures that we have individually listed by us? So that this would be secondary to that duplication of that?
I don't believe I said that, so you are correct.
Well,
I think
if
it
I
does.
might-
What I'm trying to say is I think you're duplicating it. I think there's, when we go on a conference or when we go somewhere, individually, our names are mentioned and yellowed out, as I remember, and then we have all our expenditures in there.
That is correct.
So why would you put them again here?
Ms. Welch?
You're thinking of another report. It wasn't in the warrant register. It was a separate report on council travel that we were putting in your mailboxes. This is all that's in the warrant register for detail. We can definitely add a column with, I'm not sure if you're looking for who actually used the card or who the purchase was made for. Because an administrative assistant would use a card to pay for something for a department head. So I'm not sure which one of those you're looking for, but we can certainly add it.
Mr.
The other
Fisher?
body of the warrant register is less detail.
Does this include usage of credit cards by elected officials?
It would if there was any usage.
If there were any there, and so that's just my only point. It's, somebody suggested to me, why shouldn't I be able to, I see a weekly agenda, and I just want to see it. If it's a credit card, it's probably been for a trip or something that's already been supported by the council, a very legitimate trip for a very legitimate reason. So, but for purposes of disclosure and transparency for the public, it just seems like a courtesy, that's all.
And we can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion on 10.2?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Denver.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
Aye.
Councilmember August.
Aye.
Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 10.5. Mr. Edgerton?
Right. First of all, I want to thank the city manager. He's done a lot of work on this. It's a complicated issue. It's my,
Excuse me just for a moment. Do we have a speaker on this item?
This is the item that had the
then I'll
speaker,
wait
sir.
for the
Okay,
speaker.
let's, if you would, yeah, let's go ahead and take comment from the public, please.
Jeff Schaefer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. We respectfully request that this motion or this consent be...
Excuse me, Mr. Schaefer, who is we?
I'm sorry. I'm Jeff Schaefer. We're a property owner in the subdivision that this affects, that this DIF agreement would affect.
And what's the name of the,
Mosaic.
what's
Track
the name of your corporation?
McKinley Capital Partners.
Thank you.
We own Track Dash 3.
Thank you.
We've worked with Jonathan Smith and Julie Biggs trying to resolve some of the issues of which developer is going to pay for which improvements. And our main request has been that the city enforce the existing conditions of approval as they apply to the project. Our major concern is we had to come to an agreement that those original conditions of approval would be enforced, and they require that the Garbani Road widening and that the signal be complete by the 101st occupancy. That no other occupancies would be allowed in the project unless those items were complete. On June 18th, we received an update letter from the city manager, Robert Johnson, that announced an agreement with D.R. Horton to pay for some of those improvements in return for a DIF credit, which is allowed under the conditions of approval. We're seeking clarification on which improvements are covered by what D.R. Horton's paying. We understand it's a signal, but is the road widening being covered? And if so, in that letter it stated that given that D.R. Horton paid for those improvements, they were going to go ahead and issue more occupancies to D.R. Horton. The problem is that there's more than just that signal required to be complete to issue more occupancies. And so that's why we're seeking clarification. What exactly is being covered by their payment, and and will those original conditions of approval be installed per the original conditions? That's why we're here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Edgerton?
You want me to sit
Well,
back down, or?
It's not a public hearing, so
Okay.
you're taking your 3 minutes of time on an agendized item. So we may have questions for you, so Mr. Edgerton, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The difficulty with these kinds of issues is that they're complicated and they involve staff, they involve legal, and the council doesn't really have the time to get into the depth of things as we would like to, and that's just the business. And I want to compliment Rob Johnson. I think he's done a yeoman's job on this. I'm tentatively, my position is I'm going to approve it, but I wanted to get some questions answered first. I was concerned. Jonathan is our engineer for the city. I don't understand when that letter that was sent today that we've just gotten within the last few hours. I'm assuming it's public information. Am I correct? And it appeared to me that the other parties of the agreement were suggesting that we were letting one party, D.R. Horton, off the hook, albeit they're paying a lot of money for a signal. And the question I would ask is that once that would mean D.R. Horton would now have the certificate of occupancy, they'd be able to proceed. Traffic would now hit that road. My assumption is we're going to need a widening of that road and some easements from some people fairly quickly. Is this in that consideration, or what because I assume the other party, and not just the gentleman at the mic, but some people in reference to that letter that was sent out, and I'm assuming you got it, or that email,
Yes, I did.
are suggesting that the combination of all of the things that have to be done are perhaps greater than the signal by itself. Perhaps the signal isn't by itself. Maybe the signal includes other things. I don't know.
The signal does include additional improvements in the area. Little history, McKinley brought it to my attention that there was a public safety issue there. I got with the city manager, brought him up to speed on it, and we put together what we believed was a solution that would allow us to move very quickly to solve that issue that they brought to our attention. And that's the work that the city manager has done on this agreement. And that money will allow us to do the necessary improvements to get the signal in to join the improvements that are being constructed by the developers out there. D.R. Horton continues to build the improvements out there on Garbani. They are moving forward. We're all working collaboratively to get this project completed. And at this point, I think the improvements are going in as conditioned. And this situation is...
Does that include the widening of the road that will be...
Yes.
D.R. Horton is paying for that?
D.R. Horton is actually doing a portion of it,
Mhm.
the portion that's in front of the property that they own.
Okay.
And they're also doing Palomar, and they're doing some trail improvements. They're working very collaboratively with us to get those important improvements in.
Okay. Thank you. That pretty much confirms what I assumed. And I was very pleased with what the city manager had done, because that's not the job of the council. We don't have the time or the expertise to do that. But Julie Biggs, the letter came from their legal department. And I don't want to put words in their mouth. This is my interpretation as an individual, not representing the city in reference to my interpretations. But it appeared to be that they were saying, look, you guys are giving D.R. Horton a sweetheart deal because they're doing the signal, but if you combined all of the other things that have to be done, that could be greater than the signal, et cetera. Then somebody's going to be stuck with it. Are you telling us we're going to be stuck with it? Is the city going to be picking up part of it? I can assure you there's a 5-0 vote. The city's not going to be picking it up. Do we have any legal downside in proceeding to approve this? It is my wish to approve it, but do we have any legal downside in doing it?
Well, of course, you can always be sued no matter whether you're right or wrong. But in this particular case, you have a plan that was approved by the county that had certain conditions of approval that run with the land. These are not agreements or contracts. They are approvals that state how this development will go forward. They're not discretionary issues. They're ministerial. And as things come forward, the developers, as it turns out we now have more than one, must meet those requirements in order for the project to move forward. One of the issues, of course, was the issue of the light and the expansion there. And nobody was able, among the developers, to come to a conclusion. So the city took the position that the condition is there, it must be met, you guys figure it out. And essentially they did. That is, at least one of them stepped forward and said, it's not worth it to me, I'm going to pay for this, and we'll settle the rest of it as it goes on. And that's really where it is. But each of these developers bought into the project and bought into their subdivision portions of it with the knowledge that those conditions were there. So they're there, they are charged with knowing, and there was some concern that there was a misrepresentation to them by one of the staff people, but they are charged with knowing the limits of that ability and authority of the staff to make any changes. And they're professionals at this. This is what they're the developers. So the answer is yes, you might get sued, but the chances of prevailing on the part of the city and not having to cover any of these costs are very good.
Well, the reason I said that is because this is a three-party implication with only one party accepting the agreement, and so I wondered if it would not be the better legal advice to say, get the three parties to sit down together, but apparently that's already been tried. And
It has been tried.
Yeah.
It has been tried.
And
Could I point
so
out-
when we come forward and say, in the future, if you guys want to proceed, you're going to have to agree to all of this, that's when the rubber's going to meet the road, and they're going to say, wait a minute, because you made an agreement involving three parties, and in fact, they challenged that legal ability in their note, as you probably saw.
I did see it, and quite frankly, we've been looking at this for several months, since March or so.
Okay.
And we have fully evaluated the circumstance. And the fact of the matter is that from the city's standpoint, the approval that is existing there is for the entire tract. The fact that the owners have traded off, have sold parts, have kept other parts, whatever, that's a private matter. And it's really up to them to come to some kind of agreement with each other. Now, they may end up suing each other over it because maybe there wasn't full disclosure in their sale, any number of other possibilities. But from the city's standpoint, what we have is an approved project that was approved by the county, as a matter of fact. And our interest is in getting all of the improvements done that are required for that to go forward. And we will be enforcing those conditions as we have here.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to add that we now have bonds and agreements on this project. There's a 2-year agreement that Watt executed when they came to us prior to, I think, this sale. So we're covered as far as cost. If their agreement falls out from between them, we have a 2-year contract or agreement with Watt, and we have full bonds on the complete improvements, which overlaps because some of those improvements are already in. So I'm confident that there's plenty of money to cover anything that needs to be done out there should all this go away.
Appreciate the time. Then I would move approval.
So the city has, we have a motion. Is there a second on approving the 10.5?
Second.
I have a question. So what you're saying is that the city has exercised their due diligence to make sure that the health and safety and infrastructure needs for this project have been met.
That's correct.
City attorney, if I overstep, I expect you to, because I have a couple things I need to say. Mr. Schaefer, you met, your firm, McKinley, Watt, D.R. Horton, met with our staff.
DR did not attend. We requested multiple times to have Beazer.
Okay, this is not a hearing.
No, I'm just telling you who attended.
Okay, so it was
DR didn't
McKinley
attend.
and Watt and Beazer.
They
Beazer's
and
already
DR
built out.
Right.
They built out and they're gone.
But their frontage is incomplete.
Okay, so, and I know that there were some attorneys involved as well as city staff, and the issue surrounded the condition of approval specifically as it related to this traffic signal.
No.
Actually, it was.
The completion of Garbani.
According
and the
to your
traffic signal.
attorney's letter to us, it was specifically about the condition of approval as it relates to the traffic signal. And subsequent to that discussion, it led to your attorney noticing the city about this issue. And the letter that your attorney gave us put us on notice that says we object to the condition. But yet now we have one of the partners in the Mosaic development, D.R. Horton, has completely and utterly stepped up to the plate and paid completely for this condition. And that's very commendable in my view, at least from the standpoint of them wanting to move forward from an economic and a business standpoint. So what I'm having a hard time wrestling with is why you're coming tonight to object to this issue and speaking to it, because it was your company that came to us and objected, and we had one of the other developers from the firm come and say, we've got it, we're taking care of it, and we've satisfied it. And so the fact that you object at this point. I'm a little bit at a loss as to why that is. But you're asking us to solve a problem, in my view. You're asking us, the city of Menifee, to solve a problem that you developers should have solved a long time ago between you three, or maybe even four. McKinley, Watt, Beezer, D.R. Horton. You guys should have solved that a long time ago, and for you to try to put it on us.
No, we're not putting it on
I have a
you.
problem with it. So you guys need to solve it, and you need to go forward and solve it. So with that being said, I'll call for the question. We have a motion from Mr. Edgerton and a second by Mr. August for approval of item 10.5.
Yes, Your Honor. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver.
I would have liked to have heard the reply to all of that.
I would too, but I've called for the question. Please continue.
I abstain.
I'm sorry, you abstain? And Mayor Mann?
Aye.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 10.6, which is pulled as a result of, because it's an integral part of 10.5. The only reason why I asked for it to be pulled at the same time was because it was a budgetary issue, and I'll move approval of 10.6.
Second.
We have a second from Mr. August. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember August.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. On to agenda item 11.1. We have a public hearing tonight for the Thornton Avenue Consistency Zone Change. Staff, do we have a staff report on this before we open the public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We do. I'm going to turn over the balance of the meeting, balance of the item, to Charles Leclerc, Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, used to the Planning Commission, sorry. Mayor, council members. The item before you tonight, Thornton Avenue Consistency Zoning Change, is an item that was requested by the property owner. The property is located at the northwest corner of Thornton and Murrieta Avenue. Property is currently with a general plan designation of commercial retail. Surrounding it are zoning designations on three sides that are residential, and to the south would be a similar commercial retail designation. The land uses surrounding this, as you can see on the illustration here, are predominantly on three sides residential with vacant commercial to the south of this property. The proposed zone change will change the 2.65 gross acre parcel from single-family residential to a general commercial designation. This general commercial designation would be consistent with the general plan designation that's currently on the property. The current general plan designation is the same as was applied to this property by the county when the county did a designation of the property in 2003. So the county designated this as a commercial property in 2003. The county, did not follow through and do a consistency zoning to change the underlying residential zone to a commercial zone to be consistent with their zone, their general plan designation. The city, in creating and adopting its general plan that's now in effect that you adopted in December of last year, consistently held the county's general plan designation of general commercial. The Planning Commission reviewed this item at a meeting, received a considerable amount of public comment in regard to this particular request. The individuals speaking to the commission at that time indicated their concerns for the possibility of a commercial development. They referenced a pre-application review that had identified a fueling station and convenience store. They expressed a variety of concerns for that kind of a use at this location. The Planning Commission considered their opinions in its review of that. They suggested and asked staff to bring back to them an alternative resolution to that which was in their original review packet. At that point in time, the Planning Commission was given, at the time that it was brought back to the commission, they were given two options. One, to request that the city council initiate a general plan amendment to change the general plan designation on this property from its current commercial to some level of residential, and that the council, the city, absorb the cost for that. That particular alternative was the alternative that was adopted by the Planning Commission in its review of this request, and that is the recommendation of the Planning Commission at this point to you, that the council initiate a general plan amendment and that the general plan, the new general plan designation, be some version of residential. I'll note for you that on page 9 of the staff report, it identifies that if the council chooses to go that particular direction, that the cost of such a process would be just over $15,000. We assume that it would be the exact same cost that an individual property owner would absorb if they had initiated that general plan amendment. The council also has the opportunity of taking no action tonight and allowing the property owner, if they so desire, to pursue a general plan amendment to a residential designation in response to the comments that they have heard from the individual residents surrounding this property. With that, and understanding there may be a number of people to address the council on this item, that concludes my report. I stand ready to answer any questions you may have on this particular request.
Thank you, Mr. Leclerc, for that report. I know many of us have followed this particular issue over time, and we know that there's been substantial public testimony at the Planning Commission, and we've all received correspondence and phone calls and emails, and some have attended public community meetings. So are there questions of staff? And I believe, Mr. Denver, you were up first.
What is your recommendation?
The Planning Commission's recommendation, which is what staff brings forward to you, is that the council initiate a general plan amendment that would redesignate this commercial general plan designation to some level of residential designation, depending upon what the council felt was appropriate as a density for that location.
And you have no further recommendation from the city? That's what you're bringing forward only?
I'm bringing forth the Planning Commission's recommendation, yes.
Deputy Mayor?
If I were sitting in the audience, the first question I would ask is, well, why aren't we just letting it go and let the developer pick up the cost? You haven't recommended that, and so I would want to ask why. My inclination is to support this because I have a reason why, but I wanted to know, is yours simply that the Planning Commission took this position and therefore that's why you recommend it?
I'm not recommending. I'm bringing forth the Planning Commission's recommendation. In the Planning Commission's staff report, I note that for consistency with the general plan that was just adopted by the council in 2013, December of 2013, staff's recommendation at that point in time was to allow the consistency to take place, to allow the change to a commercial zoning designation. In addition, this recommendation for the city to absorb the fee is something that the Planning Commission recommends to you. Staff, it's completely a philosophical discussion before the council as to whether you would want to absorb that cost or not. To be physically conservative, staff would not recommend that you absorb that cost. But it is strictly a philosophical question for the council.
Okay, then, Mrs. Biggs, that cannot be construed as a gift of public funds, can it?
Well, it could be if you don't have a good reason for doing it. In other words, one of the things you should be discussing is what is the advantage to the city of pursuing this particular outcome. And if there is an advantage to the city, if it more closely dovetails with your goals for the area or the community's wishes, then that's a different situation.
Well,
So
I
you
think
do have to
I
make
might be able to
findings.
come up with a reason, but this is, I think, really in Councilman August and Councilman Furman's bailiwicks, so I'll let them take the lead and watch and hopefully be supportive.
Mr. August?
Mr. Leclerc, what was the land use designation prior to 2003?
I'm not aware of that. I'm going to have to let Planner Fowler give that answer.
That would have been prior to the adoption of the 2003 general plan, county general plan.
But what was that?
It was just the zoning that was in effect, which was for the scenic highway commercial.
There was a zoning designation, and it was prior to 2003?
I'm sorry, it was one-family dwellings. It was the R1, 10,000 square foot minimum lot size.
Oh, wait,
Sorry, that was the zoning.
So the zoning was in place without a general plan designation being in place.
But to follow up with that, before we incorporated, if you come back, Ryan, to the microphone, the land use designation for that parcel was commercial, was it not?
Well, that was prior to the 2003 general plan. So prior to 2003, it didn't have a commercial land use,
So what was it after 2003?
the commercial retail.
Okay, so it retained retained its commercial designation. The parcels across the street, when I mean across the street, are immediately to the south. That southwest corner, that southwest corner of the vacant land is also designated commercial according to our land use map.
That is correct.
So when it comes to our general plan and the land use designation, this council did not change that from the RCIP, which we inherited, to what we adopted on December 18th of 2013.
That is correct.
At issue is the underlying zoning associated with it.
Correct.
Which the county never cleaned up either.
Correct.
They had a land use of commercial, and the underlying zoning was, as you already stated, R1 residential.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions of staff? All right, very well. I will open up the public hearing at time 8:20. Madam Clerk, was this properly noticed?
Yes, Your Honor.
And did we receive any additional correspondence as a result, other than what we've already had in our red folders?
And you do, yes, you do have some correspondence that was in your red folders, I believe, but no further from that.
Okay, very well. Then we'll take the first public commenter on this public hearing.
Thank you. Red Sullivan?
And if you would please, all the public commenters that are coming up, just as you give us your comments, tell us whether you're in favor or whether you're opposed. That would be very helpful to us.
Okay. I'm Carol Sullivan, known as Red. So I thank you for hearing me
Your
this
Honor,
evening.
I need some clarification. I didn't realize this was an applicant situation, and the applicant is wondering if he can speak first. I need some clarification, please.
The applicant is entitled to
Yeah,
have first
absolutely,
say.
and that's, I apologize, that's my error as the chair.
Sorry.
If you could just stand down for a moment, you'll
I
be
don't
very
lose any of
next.
my time, right?
Yeah, you'll get your time.
I've been here
No, you
before.
won't lose your
The
time.
process calls for the applicant to speak first, and then, yeah.
Mr.
right.
Sedgwick's.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor, City Council, the city staff, and the public that came out this evening. I'll make it fairly brief. After the Planning
Could
Commission...
you state your name for the record and who you represent, please?
Sure. My name is Trevor Sudweeks. I have my own company, Sudweeks Construction. I live in Canyon Lake, California. I work in Menifee, California.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. After I was directed by the Planning Commission on the March 23rd Planning Commission meeting, I held a series of 3 neighborhood meetings. The first neighborhood meeting, the neighbors asked me to come up with a couple of plans, a residential plan and also a commercial plan. And so I did that. I went to my architect and we came up with a couple of rough drawings. And I would just like to share those with you, if that would be okay, if I could
Quickly?
stand those up.
And do you need help?
No, the first plans. You can just hold them up.
Sure.
Basically, these
Just
are.
hold them up.
I came up with these two different plans, the commercial and the residential plan.
The commercial
And
being
this
on-
was on the second neighborhood
Commercial
meeting.
being on the left and the residential being on the right?
Correct. And the neighbors, they like they like the residential plan better. And so they asked me if I would consider losing a couple of units and coming up with a little more refined plan, which I did. And I'll present that to you, and if it's okay with council, I brought a 8.5 by 11s for you to look at. And again, these were just rough examples of what we would, what the site would look like if I were to develop it residentially. The neighborhood seemed to really support the residential one, although my application, was for commercial. In listening to their concerns, I decided that I would work with them, and that, from my understanding, the way the last neighborhood meeting went, the neighbors seemed to genuinely be in favor of the residential plan that I am, in working with them, would be happy to build in the city of Menifee.
Any questions from the council of the applicant, Mr. August?
Mr. Sedgwick's, I just want to let the council know that I went to both of the scoping meetings with Mr. Sedgwick within his community, and it was actually, he's quite accurate when he says the majority of the people in the neighborhood were for the residential over the commercial. And I've talked to him on the phone several times, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Sedgwick, but by turning this into, reverting it to the residential over the commercial, they were, at first the community did not want a gas station. I believe you said you'd give up the gas station. I believe you said you wanted the restaurant. But at the end of all this, you were making concessions after concessions, and sitting in the audience, and Gina Gonzalez was with me one night, I was really impressed by the fact that you were sitting there working with the community, what I consider outreach. I don't see too much of that from I haven't seen, in my limited experience on the council, I haven't seen that. So I really appreciate it. That's why I had several conversations with, and I know you've talked to several people on the council as well, but they can let the city know that. Before we vote on this, I know the last time I was asked 2 questions at those meetings, and they were pretty benign, but you did look at me at one of those conversations. You said, well, you do think, do you think that the council the city will pay for it? And I said well, you have talked to the other council members. Well, it came clear to me after that meeting, and I let you know this, that it wasn't clear on the part of the city that they would take up the expense for the general plan amendment change. So I became aware of that after talking to the city manager and some of the council people and so on and so forth. I just want to let the people know that. But I just want to say that I do appreciate the fact that you've taken all the time to sit down with the citizens. And even though this would be at a financial loss to you, I'm not quite sure much going residential rather than commercial. I just want to say I appreciate it, and I'll wait to hold my vote, but I wanted to tell you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What year did you buy that parcel, if I might ask?
August of 2013.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, less than 2 years ago.
Less than a year ago.
So who, might I ask who you purchased it from?
I'm not, I can't remember
You
the
don't know who
gentleman's
held it
name.
before that?
He was trying to move back to Montana.
So when you bought it, your expectation was, you knew that the land use was commercial.
Absolutely. I bought it for commercial. I primarily develop commercial.
So I mean, I can't ask you what your weighted average cost of capital is. I don't know what your long-term debt structure is. It doesn't matter, but clearly you're losing money, I think, probably by making these concessions. But the fact that you're listening to the community and making those concessions and still maybe turning a profit, I think that's commendable to you. I just wanted to share that with you. Whatever
Thank
the
you.
outcome is tonight. I mean, I appreciate the fact that that you are willing to meet with the community and go out and do those things. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, and I appreciate the community working with me as well.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You'll have an opportunity to come back up after we take additional public testimony. You'll be the last one to speak if that's your desire.
Should I make one more point?
Of course.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I just let the people in the audience know that Mr. Sedgwick's is a commercial developer. He developed the Commons down there.
Newport Commons.
Newport Commons, that's correct. So
right.
you can tell the people where it is, but it's right above.
It's on Newport Road, just east of Bradley.
That's
On the
correct.
same, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
very well. We'll take the first public commenter.
With no loss of time, Red Sullivan.
And while Red's coming out, how many speakers do we have tonight on this item? Okay, thank you.
Always hope.
All right, you're up, Miss
Hi.
Sullivan.
Okay. I am in favor of it switching back to residential, and I'll base this on the fact that I live across the street in Sun Meadows, which is all residential, and we are manufactured homes. And as it is right now, if you turn that into commercial, getting out of Sun Meadows is going to be virtually impossible. There's only one way out of Sun Meadows, and that faces Thornton. And the property going out there, the traffic is impossible as it is right now. There aren't any signal lights on there except at McCall, which is quite a distance down. I think I would like to see it remain residential because that's consistent with which is what is around there. I think putting commercial in there is going to create a hardship for some of the seniors. They're going to have to, it's impossible to get out of Sun Meadows. We need a signal there now. But I know $200,000, you're not going to put one until you kill about 10 of us. So anyway, anyway, I would really like to see you adopt as residential and initiate the change. It's only the first change that you've made since you've adopted it. You can do that 4 times a year. I realize that he bought it with the idea that it was commercial. But those of us who've lived there would like to see it remain residential, even though at this point in time that will be extremely high residential and it'll be high density with the amount of homes they're putting there. But I'd rather see that than a market or a filling station or something to that effect. We also have children that get off at Chambers and get off at Rouse off of school buses. And if it's commercial, they're going to be going in there, which is also going to endanger them being on Marietta, which is a high risk. And there are not that many sidewalks on Marietta. You're not going to find very many sidewalks there at all. And again, you're running into a fact that kids will be going into commercial areas possibly. And I would like to see it remain residential, consistent with the rest of it. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ms. Sullivan. Next speaker.
Grant Yoders.
Grant Yoders, Community of Menifee. I certainly appreciate Mr. Sedgwick's concessions in regards to wanting to develop this property as residential. And based upon the findings and conclusions incorporated in the staff report and per the recommendations of the Planning Commission, it is requested that the City Council give consideration to adopt this resolution to amend the general plan to a residential land use. We, the affected residents, turned out en masse at the March 24th and April 8th Planning Commission meetings, voicing our legitimate concerns regarding the zone change to commercial. There were approximately 52 commenters at both meetings speaking against the change. In your packet, there are at least 10 letters and hundreds of signatures. I will not take the time to list my arguments because they will be repetitious to what you may hear from the other speakers. But each and every one of our comments are on the Planning Commission meetings DVDs for you to listen. We're not blind to the fact that this piece of property will eventually be developed, but in keeping with the characteristics of the surrounding area, it should be kept residential, and we hope that the City Council will vote as such. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yoders. Next speaker.
William Clue.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just for clarification, it's Clo. Just on a side note. What we're finding here is an interesting concept. We have a new city that's, sort of progressing, and you adopted the county, which is normal progress. We residents that moved in here, residents look for zoning. Our residents, I'm in the Sun Ranch development that butts up against this particular property. Our residents looked and inquired about zoning and found residential. Developers look for land use. What am I going to do with the land? Commercial, hence the conflict that's here. You have 2 acres on one side, you have 10 acres on the other. You can kill with the 10 and not the 2. We've expressed a lot of safety hazards with regard to filling stations, busing issues, both elementary and high school bus stops, deputy safety, possible crime situations and crime increasing, so forth and so on. At the end of the day, I want to commend Mr. Sudwig. He turned down my first offer that he would donate it and we'd make Sudwig Park. But it was going to, for the canine unit, it was going to be very good for dogs. But unfortunately, he does want to build on the land. So particularly at the end of the day that we're looking for, we have a number of families that butt up against that. And to be commended by him with his residential option does provide a solution so that everyone can be there. And also with regard to the planning in the future of our city, to be able to provide those particular conveniences and businesses that are necessary for our city to grow within a traffic easement that might be a little more advantageous to all the people that are there in the future. So I thank you for your time, and I support the residential. Side note with that. Because of the fact that the county, you had adopted with regard to the county, because there's this cost issue that sort of comes up with it. We've been residents here for 7 years. We didn't do that. I don't know who's going to pay that bill if you need to raise the taxes or whatever, but I would hate that I've got to deal with a child's safety because of the fact of $15,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Spoken like a true debate coach at a high school. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Next speaker, please.
Laura Clough.
Good evening, Mayor Mann and council members. I'm in favor of the Planning Commission's recommendations to keep the property zoned residential. My quiet neighborhood in the Sun Ranch community is a peaceful place with growing families and lots of children. We enjoy the tranquil area and don't find it difficult to drive within 3 to 5 miles to get gas or to get a convenience store or fast food. And we're not asking for any of those kind of commercial businesses. The property at the corner of Murrieta and Thornton is zoned residential, and we want to keep it that way. Responsible growth of a community means the businesses will be built to help it thrive, but the council members must keep the needs of the citizens in the forefront. Please don't choose revenues over the majority consensus of those who live there and have signed petitions and stated to me and my neighbors that they don't want these businesses built there. Businesses belong on larger thoroughfares that run through the city. And the developer has met with the local residents multiple times in an effort to create consensus in this matter. And the residents were always against commercial development, and so the developer drew up residential plans, owning to the fact that the neighbors were so strongly against any businesses. This is a quiet, peaceful community, and please keep the property at Murrieta and Thornton zoned residential. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Lori Pope.
Good evening. My name is Lori Pope. Thank you for the opportunity to address this issue. As we're all aware, this lot is zoned for single-family residential use, but is in conflict with the recently adopted land use designation. The conflict became clear to the residents in this area only after Mr. Sedgwick applied for a zone change that would allow him to build gas stations, liquor stores, drive-thrus, fast food restaurants, and 4-story office suites. Our response was immediate, swift, and overwhelming. Our community has collected over 500 signatures from residents in the immediate vicinity who are in opposition of changing the zoning to allow any commercial development. Through 2 standing room only planning commission meetings, our voices were clear: keep the lot residential. The planning commission heard our pleas and voted unanimously to keep the zoning residential, and suggested an amendment of the city's general plan so that the land use designation could be changed to match the residential zoning already in place. As he already stated, Mr. Sedweeks coordinated several neighborhood meetings with the local residents, and he has agreed to support residential development. We, the local area residents, need your help to finish this. With the area residents, the developer, and the entire planning commission on board with keeping this parcel residential, there should be no question in passing this resolution. There is no public outcry for more commercial development in this residential area. The developer has presented a plan to build 24 townhomes on this corner, and it was met with significant approval from the local residents. While the community would rather the residential development be less dense, in the spirit of civic compromise, we have found a common ground with townhomes. Please allow for the local citizens and the parties involved to move forward with our compromise on the direction of development in our little pocket of Menifee. Please vote to amend the general plan and change the land use designation to reflect the current residential zoning for this parcel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Those are all the people who have asked to speak on public testimony.
Are there any other members of the audience that wish to speak on this matter? Then I would ask Mr. Sedgwick, you have the last word before I close the public hearing.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, and you know, I'm on board with this, with the doing the 24 townhomes, and I'm glad that, you know, it's a quiet, happy community again.
Mr. Hang on, Mr. August, you're up first.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, and could you give us, Mr. Sedgwick, could you give us a little idea about the size of these? What is the actual density here? It's a little higher than across the street, I know, but considering you know, the size of the parcel and the concessions made and things like that, so it doesn't seem to bother the people in the community. But didn't you give in a little more park? And maybe I shouldn't ask this right now, but are you considering making it a gated community?
I'm not certain yet. There's pros and cons. I'm at this point leaning towards that. I'll address that.
Sure. And what is the size of the actual units?
They're about 1,800 square feet.
1,800.
1,800 to 2,000 square feet. Yes. Yes.
Mr. Edgerton? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, sir.
No, you still have.
And
I'm
the
sorry.
density is, to answer your second question, the density is 10 units. It's slightly less than 10 units to the acre. I committed to the neighborhood that I would not build any more homes than I showed on the final plan.
I'm okay.
Mr. Edgerton?
No, just to follow up Councilman August and reference to whether or not the community was gated, it would, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if a community is gated, it adds a little bit to the value when you're trying to sell that property. It obviously adds to the security and a higher probability of traffic flow that would be anticipated. Am I wrong in that? I'm trying to think of the downside of not gating it, because
I can't think of one right now either.
Okay, because you and I believe, had a phone
we
conversation.
did have a talk, yes.
And I know that correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you got a different story from the community, but I would suspect that they would appreciate it if that were a gated community, and I suspect even more the people who buy those homes from you or from whomever
Yes.
are going to appreciate a gated community, and whoever sells it's going to get more if it's gated. May not be a monumental amount, but from all of the indications I've seen in real estate, gated communities sell for more.
And I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I would suspect that's the way it will go.
Mr. LeClaire?
just want to make a point about the illustration that they gave. That configuration would be difficult to have a gated community and have the backup space or have the queuing space before you enter into that gate. It's not that it's impossible, but the particular configuration that was shown would be very difficult to have a gated community.
And we're not here to design the project tonight. We're here to decide a zoning issue.
Right.
How many acres is that corner? I'm sorry, I missed.
2.65.
2.65 acres. And you owned it since 2013?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Any other questions from council? All right, thank you, Mr. Sedgwick.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm going to close the public hearing at time 8:44, and we're inside the rail. Gentlemen, the discussion's amongst us four, and how shall we proceed on this particular item?
Let me start.
Go ahead,
Mr. Denver?
I'm in favor of this motion. I think that this is, has been stated by Councilman Greg August, that this is unusual that a developer in our town would sit down with the community and come up and change what he may or may not have the right to do and change it to what they would like to do. I think this is unusual. It's a positive. He bought a piece of, I can tell you as a realtor, he bought a piece of commercial property, which the product is worth far more than residential, I assure you. The only issue to me, and to me it's no issue, is the $12,000–$15,000 for the change of our general plan. I think he's bending over backwards. I think we have the obligation to encourage this for the benefit of the citizens who spent a great deal of time getting him to negotiate, and him for the negotiation. So I would, and when the time is proper, I think we ought to have a motion to accept this as written, paying the money as proposed. He didn't ask for this change. He doesn't want that changed. He'd like to have it commercial. He's doing that for the citizens, and so I'm not sure that he should have to pay that.
So is that a motion from you to adopt?
That is a motion if it's
Okay.
proper time.
All right. Is there a second, or is there additional discussion?
So, and let me just correct this. Mr. Denver's motion is to approve the resolution and have the city absorb the cost for the general
It
plan.
is
amendment
indeed.
change.
That's.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Edgerton?
Just a couple of questions. Mr. LeCoeur or council, whomever, the developer has the right, does he not, to develop this as commercial based on the zoning?
No, in the same way that you've got a, well, the current.
The land use is in conflict with the zoning.
Correct. General plan's land use is in conflict with the current underlying zoning. So until that conflict is resolved, you're going to end up with, in the same way of hillside development, the goals and policies of the general plan not allowing the property, not allowing the planning division to approve plans for development of that land.
It would be reasonable, though, for someone who owned that property to assume they had the right to develop it as commercial, as described by Councilman Denver, would it not?
I would assume that anyone that was buying property would do their proper due diligence in investigating both the general plan and zoning designations of the property.
John, did you want to?
My only comment is that I wish I had $1 for every time the county or the cities around here come through and do general plan changes, and the zoning is underneath it is always different, and when you buy a property, you assume that the city has done its diligence and that they want it, in this case, commercial. So when you look at the two, the residential and the commercial, and the city just approved the commercial, you assume you're buying, and it is logical to assume, and your realtor will tell you, it is in all likelihood going to be commercial.
Okay, well, I guess I want to address my question to Ms. Biggs. It appeared to me that the developer did have an option, whether to go commercial or whether to go residential. And there was, to put it lightly, some disharmony and disruption in the community. There were petitions, et cetera, et cetera. So their concern was about traffic and crime and safety. The developer wants to proceed with commercial. He's acknowledging the disharmony, the concern in the community regarding crime, safety, traffic, youth, seniors. Is it not then, in answer to the gift of public funds, a defense to say that in adopting this motion, we've taken into consideration the public health and safety issue, and the fact that the gentleman has yielded to the wishes of the community, it is then appropriate for us to proceed and pick up the tab?
Yes, entirely. The fact that with any general plan, with any zoning arrangement, changes over time create different needs and different desires by the community. And in this case, you've heard very loudly from the community, as has the developer. And contrary to his economic interests, he is in fact accommodating that change. That's a benefit to the city as a whole, and it's certainly a benefit to the residents there. So based on the public health and safety issues that you've mentioned, you certainly have the grounds for absorbing a very small cost to accomplish a very large positive outcome.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I have a couple. We have a motion, first of all, by Mr. Denver and a second by Mr. August. And we're going to get to that question in a moment, but I'm really very, very severely conflicted on this because this council has weighed in on numerous times, both with development projects and the general plan about property rights. And it really disturbs me that this particular issue, it seems that we're bending to the community that's immediately surrounding the property. And you know, that's okay. I understand that that's okay. But when we talk about property rights, I received a phone call from one property owner that lives along Murrieta Road in the development that's right next to this corner. And they were complaining to me over the telephone about traffic noise, right? And I go, well, I'm sorry, but that's not my problem. You bought the home there along Murrieta Road. And so there is in contract law, there is a concept, whether you go out and buy a car or a motorcycle or whatever, there's a thing called caveat emptor, which is buyer beware. You know, it's your due diligence to know what you're buying into. And then 6, 7, 8 years down the road, you have buyer's remorse about a particular issue along the corner. I'm really conflicted about this because we're possibly considering approving this issue and absorbing the cost of a general plan amendment for 2.65 acres. I ask you, gentlemen, what are we going to do down the road when the development across the street, which is also land use commercial, comes before us or a future council? I'm really conflicted about setting a precedence here, but I do believe that there has been a compromise that's been achieved between the landowner of that commercial property, and it is commercial property per the land use designation, and it has been commercial property land use designation since way before 2003. And so those factors are why I'm really very conflicted about my decision tonight, and it'll be interesting to see how I vote. But I wanted to get these points out there because as we as a council go forward in this city, you know, we spent $1.3 million in 5.5 years on our general plan. And here we are, no less than 8 months later, we're getting ready to do our second general plan amendment. And we're doing a general plan amendment potentially for 2 acres or 2.5 acres. So I'm probably going to go with the majority here, and I'm going to go side with the compromise that's been achieved by the residents and the landowner. But I think this council, in my opinion, needs to get serious about commercial development. We either going to uphold our economic development corridors that we approved in our general plan, and we're going to support the commercial land uses that we approved, or we're not. And I know all the comments are very germane. I know the Sun Meadows development across the street. I understand that they may not have bought into that years and years and years ago, but the residential development to the north of it is a different story. So all that to say, those are my points. And Mr. August, do you have a additional conversation?
I'm going to say this with a smile on my face, so come over here and look at me for a second, because I'm kind of kidding you. But I think we did remove the Womble property from the agenda tonight, so I would like you also to remember that vote.
Well, I don't know what that has to do with this issue, but, so with that said, we have a motion and we have a second, and I'll call for the question if there's no further discussion.
Can I just say one other thing, since if this was my property, I'd be pushing for commercial. I wouldn't go along with this at all. I think this guy's really amazing that he tolerated the citizens wanting to change his plan. He bought this commercial property. And so if he's decided to do this, I'm going to go along with him.
Mr. Leclerc, you have the final point here. Do you have the floor?
Thank you, Mayor. The question is about timing of this change. My suggestion to you is that if you pass this resolution, that it be with the anticipation that his project will go concurrent with the general plan amendment. That way, a specific development, a specific residential development can be tied to that zone change, so that the zone change doesn't happen and the gentleman sells the property as speculation.
But is that part of the staff report, and is that part of the agenda item?
It's not part of either. It's simply a clarification of your anticipation in taking this action based upon the representation that the gentleman has presented tonight.
Okay. Is that your desire, motion maker?
I made a motion. I'm sticking to what the motion was written exactly here, because I don't fully understand what you're saying. And if we want to go back and redo all this again, then we have to pull it off the agenda and have it redone.
City Attorney?
I have a question for Mr. Leclerc. As I'm looking at the resolution, this doesn't look like the resolution that changes it to some, that initiates the general plan change. At least there's language here that talks about it. The project proposes to change the zoning from one-family dwellings to the general commercial. Do we have the right resolution? Part of it looks okay, but this doesn't.
Oh, boy. Right, on the last page of the resolution, which I'm trying to find the particular page number on, which I don't see. Resolution of the City Council.
The
It
conclusion
does
says
identify.
the City Council cannot make each of the 4 required findings in a positive manner to amend the property zoning classification to general commercial.
My resolution, which follows the commission's, which follows the end of the report, so page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th of that identifies that now therefore the City Council of the City of Menifee resolves and orders as follows. And 1, 2, 3. 3, the City Council approves an alternative to the proposed zone change, initiating a general plan amendment, changing the existing land use designation of commercial retail to a residential use designation, and so
All right.
forth.
Okay.
Yep, I see it. It's on the last page of the resolution.
All right. There was just a lot of stuff before then that seemed to be
Yes.
contradictory.
All right, very well. So
Excellent.
we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any additional discussion about this item? Hearing none, call for the question, please.
approval of the resolution in Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Question, Kathy, that was with the city paying for the,
Yes, well, there was no
The-
actual
yeah,
applicant on
that's-
this
that's
project.
correct. The applicant is not paying for the general plan amendment by our action
can
tonight.
we take 10 minutes?
We are going to recess at 9 until 9:10. We stand recessed.
Oh, what I said with a smile.
8:14. He's going to only say go.
Okay, it is 9:10, and we are back in session.
Do we generally fall under the general
You know,
plan environmental impact?
at the risk of sounding really silly, but maybe we should have more recesses. We can clear the house, you know. Oh, maybe we should do that before public comment sometime. Yeah, well, no, you're still there. That's okay, though. We appreciate your support and the fact that you're still here. So, we are now on to 11.2, which was tabled to a date uncertain, which was also with direction to renotice it in the future. So we're on to agenda item 11.1, which is another public hearing, Menifee Heights zone change. Mr.
Make that
Johnson.
11.3.
11.3. What'd I say? I'm sorry, 11.3, Menifee Heights zone change.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll hand it over again to Charles Leclerc for the balance of the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. The request before you tonight is change of zone number 2013-082. It's a request to change the land use designation on a small portion of an approved tract, that being tract number, excuse me one second, 32277. The property has a current zoning as illustrated on here, both residential R4 and open area combined zone R5 in this particular specific plan. Surrounding uses consist of, or surrounding zoning is versions of residential and agricultural. Surrounding development are the same residential, open space, vacant land and residential and or agricultural uses. The request before you tonight is to change approximately 11 acres of a 157 or so acre parcel from a residential designation to basically an open space designation. This would make that land use designation consistent with the physical terrain that's associated and with the tract map as divided and approved under the tract map. This illustration here shows the tract that was and has been approved. The green area is a park. The red area is the area proposed to be changed. That area is significant slope. Oh, excuse me, blue area. Colorblind people have some difficulties. The blue area is where, which is basically slope at this point in time, which would be changed to the the R5 open space designation. That way it's preserved as the open space. That way it's not developed in the future for anything. It would be consistent with the configuration of the underlying tract map. The Planning Commission reviewed this item and forwarded a recommendation to you that the zone change be approved based upon the findings within the staff report, and I will attempt to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of staff? I have a practical question just because I don't know planning or other than my experience on the council. Why didn't we take care of this issue when we approved the map and the project in the first place? Why didn't we take care of it then?
I don't have a good answer to that. It should have been taken care of, but it was
Because you
not.
weren't here.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, got it. All right, very good. So we should have taken care of it then. If you were here, we would have probably made that happen. That's all I wanted to share. Oh, Mr. Smith, let the record reflect that Mr. Smith wasn't here either. All right. With that being said, if there's no other questions of staff, I'll open the public hearing at time 9:14. Do we have, Madam Clerk, was this properly noticed?
Yes, sir.
Do we receive any additional correspondence on this?
No, sir.
And do we have any public commenters other than the applicant?
No, sir.
Does the applicant wish to address council on this matter?
Mike White with CV Communities, just briefly, great presentation. It was a mistake that was done early years ago when the map was originally approved in the county. It was caught very late, and that's why there was a condition added to the tentative map to clean it up. And so we're coming back to, it's more of a technical cleanup item as opposed to anything else.
So it was
The original.
It was before even you bought the
Oh,
property, is what I
absolutely,
just heard you say.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It didn't match the zoning map, didn't match the approved tentative map, and staff recognized it at the last minute before Planning Commission at that time, a couple years ago, and added a condition that we'd have to come back and clean it up.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Hearing none. Anybody wish to comment? Closing the hearing at 9:15. Council, what's your pleasure on this? I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Edgerton.
Well, as usual, I have real concerns about increasing density. And at a later date, I'll bring up a minimum lot size that I want to put on the agenda. Obviously, the difficulty is we have a lot of things that are in the pipeline which involve not only legal considerations, but a matter of equity. So I can't find any reason to deny this. It causes me a little heartburn, but the time to make changes to this have probably passed a long time ago as far as any kind of equitable agreement. So I'm going to move approval on this. That's my
Is
motion.
there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Clarifying that was an introduction of the ordinance and scheduled for second reading?
Introduce.
Got it. Councilmember Denver.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
Aye.
Councilmember August. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. On to agenda item 11.4. A public hearing for confirming special assessments for unpaid trash collection services for waste management. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is our annual public hearing to adopt a resolution confirming the special assessments for unpaid trash collection services. It's noted that the franchise hauler mailed out notices to all affected property owners on record with Proposition 218 notification guidelines. They were given a certain time period to make those fines and penalties go away. Those that did not, per our current franchise agreement, will move to the annual item for tax roll purposes. That completes staff's report.
Any questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll open the, Madam Clerk, do we have a speaker? Oh, we received correspondence, did we not?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to tell you both those things. First, you did receive correspondence. It's in your folder. And yes, it was legally noticed. And yes, you have a speaker and simply a representative of Waste Management who will introduce himself.
All right, please proceed.
Mark, oh boy, Stackle.
Good evening, Mayor Mann and members of the council and staff. My name is Mark Stackle. I'm with Waste Management. I'm just here tonight to introduce myself to you and let you know that I'm here with a representative from our accounting team, Angela Dance, to field any questions any residents may have regarding their bill if they received a delinquent notice. I also want to just let the council know how much we enjoyed as a company being able to support and participate in the Independence Day celebration and parade a few weeks ago. That was great. And I also wanted to thank Jonathan Smith and his staff for their support in our rolling out green waste services to about 150 residents that didn't have that service previous to that rollout a couple months ago. So thank you, Jonathan, and your staff, and just thank you for a good evening, and appreciate the partnership we have with the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Edgerton?
I wanted to ask a question. In the contract, it's understood that if there's a residence on a property, then that property gets billed for trash collection or refuge, whatever the terminology is. I'm an old timer, so I think of terms that we used to use. And of course, there's a lot of teeth grinding and gnashing over that from some people. They say, why can't we haul away our own property or imposing this on us? And I can appreciate from the standpoint of a company trying to determine pickup and the logistics of that by saying, well, you got to miss this spot, and that you end up being a paper boy. and that's not very lucrative. What about a lot where there is no resident on it or a parcel? Do they also pay for trash collection?
If there's no dwelling on there, I don't believe they do, no.
You're not certain on that?
Pretty
You
sure.
are certain.
Yeah, I'm sure. Correct. Yes, they do not pay for it.
Councilman Denver says you are certain.
Mr. Johnson?
Okay.
I'm certain it only affects residential and commercial properties where there's a dwelling and someone living on the property.
Okay. Now I know you're very certain. Okay, fine.
100%.
That's good. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions? All right, Mr. Denver?
Just so that, we had a big discussion long time ago when we signed that contract in the beginning, and you offered us, not you personally, but Waste Management offered us the choice of having it for everyone or doing what you mentioned. The problem was the price, and it was, I don't remember for sure, 20% more for everybody who chose it if we gave them the choice of whether to have it or not. You didn't care. The money was the same, no offense, same to you. Right. The other thing was that you even had a component at more money to the rest of us where we didn't have to do what we're doing tonight. We chose the most economical way for all of us, and the way that other cities do, because we were following at that point much of what other cities in the county and everybody does. And so this is what made the most sense.
Correct.
Mr. Johnson?
Well, I would just add that there's a state mandated Assembly Bill 939 that requires all residential properties and commercial properties to have their trash removed at least once per week. And if you had folks doing self-haul permits or handling their own refuse, A, it actually would be more costly, and B, if they had to do it weekly, and B, they would have to transport that, and C, it would be very hard for us to manage those state mandated guidelines if we didn't have service to those residents that we have through our hauler waste management. So I just want to add that too.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did I close the public hearing yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this matter from the public? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing at time 9:22. With that, council, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
We have no discussion items tonight on the city attorney report.
Yes, in fact, there is something to report this evening. As you know, we do have a ballot measure that will be on the November ballot, and you have authorized the drafting of the impartial analysis, which we've completed. There's also an option for the council that you authorized for the council to either select one or several members to write an argument supporting the measure, seeing as it's a council measure. So at some point, you need to decide soon who among you will be drafting that, or if you'd like to have staff draft it, we can do that. But there needs to be some attention paid to that.
What's the argument?
The argument for, well, I'm assuming that your argument in favor of the ballot measure would be that this maintains the intent of the election by district initiative and keeps the mayor's salary at a constant level in relation to the council, so that it is adjustable in the same way that the council salary is adjustable. So it would be brief.
Sounds like you should write it, Mayor.
Well, I abstained from putting it on the ballot, so I'm not going to write it. I'm not going to author it, but maybe
I don't think you should write it. I don't really think that makes any sense at all. I think
Ms. Pika should write it.
Yeah, I think Ms. Pika's right. Let's have staff write it. What do you say?
Okay, yeah, I'm in agreement. Let's have staff write it.
Okay, we'll take care of that, Kathy.
And
Okay.
perhaps the clerk is probably the most,
I think we
I
have
think
it.
that's an attorney thing.
Okay.
You're not
I would
staff?
recommend the city attorney draft the argument
however, the city
Okay.
clerk is
and
responsible.
have the clerk file it.
It
Ar-
will
argue-
need to be signed by somebody from the council.
Argue amongst yourselves, and we'll decide who signs it.
All right, and we'll bring it back.
All right.
Okay.
Does that conclude city attorney report? Thank you.
does.
Thank you very kindly. City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We do have a Public Works update, but before I get to that, there was an item that came up at the Community Services Commission, and I wanted Robert Lennox to apprise you of that and get some feedback so that we could move forward on it.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, and City Council. The request during commission meeting came from the commission chair with an interest in holding the commission meetings in increase. What is currently approved in the ordinance that established the commission was meeting once a month. The commission chair had a request to meet twice a month. My feedback to him and the rest of the commission was that because it's been approved by ordinance, it would require us to go back and adopt, or have the City Council adopting another ordinance to amend that ordinance in order for that to occur. Also, there's a budgetary implication. Right now, the approved budget for this particular, the stipends for commissioners for the year is total about $4,500. If there's twice a month meetings, it would double that to $9,000. So we would have to also come back and ask for an additional allocation to accommodate their stipends for additional meetings. So in essence, the intent of the update is to get some consensus from council about what we should do, and then return to you if there's a positive outcome to entertain additional meetings.
Mr. August?
Can we, I'm asking the council here, can we think about that for a while and not make a decision tonight on that?
Yeah.
Maybe come back at the next
Can we think
meeting?
about that till the next budget?
No, I'm willing to, go ahead and say what you want to say, sir.
I just think this needs to be discussed when we do budget. We're just changing things. We haven't even got going yet on the budget. Let's wait till we have a new budget, and if it makes sense, then we'll put it in the next budget.
Let me ask it another way and throw in a curveball here for a city attorney or staff. If the planning commission needs to meet more frequently, if there's a special need, do they not have, and does staff not have the flexibility to call an additional meeting? And so if the answer to that is yes, if the Community Services Commission needs to call an additional meeting, do they not have that flexibility?
Well, with regard to the Planning Commission, of course, they're more than just advisory. The Parks Commission is an advisory-only body. And we have set up in the ordinance that they will meet once a month, as I understand it. What they could do at a meeting, however, if they had everything on the agenda that they wanted to address and they didn't get to it, they could certainly adjourn it for 2 weeks and have that adjourned meeting to complete the list of tasks.
Would they not also have the flexibility to appoint committees from within their own body to address issues?
Subcommittees, yes.
So
yes.
Perhaps, Mr. Lennox, until the council's ready to adjust the ordinance, that maybe the direction to the commission would be then to maybe assign some subcommittees for certain issues? And then
There would not be, particularly with an adjournment, there would not be a separate stipend for the adjourned meeting. It would all be one meeting,
Right.
no increased cost.
So, I mean, I'm okay with whatever we want to do. It just seems to me as we have created this commission and it's in the code, we want them to do good things. They've had a request to increase meetings, and there obviously may be a need to do that, maybe not, I don't know. What's your recommendation, Mr. Lennox?
I believe the impetus came from, because it was the first meeting, there was certainly a myriad of issues that the commission would love to tackle. Those will dilute and thin out as time moves forward. There's a patience factor I think the folks on the commission will need to grapple with as we move on, though.
Okay, all right. So I hear the council saying no direction on that tonight. That's what I hear. All right. Is that what you needed? All right. Mr.
Thank you for that feedback. I'll turn it over to Jonathan Smith for the balance of the city manager report.
Thank you. Here's a quick snapshot of 21 items that the Public Works Department is working on. A third of those have been completed. Just want to highlight the last one, which is the on-call professional services RFP, which is due on Monday, and that'll allow us to select consultants through an RFP process. I'm going to highlight some of these items as we go through the update here. Land development projects, currently 80 active development projects in the city. 22 active tracks, which involve grading right now. Out of those 22, 52 tracks are actively building homes. I've been wondering why I can't catch up here. Here's a comparison of last year totals to this year's half-year totals. Encroachment permits for last year, 232. Half the year already, we're at 183. Grading permits last year, total of 29. This year, we're at 33. Improvement plans, 16 last year that we processed. Currently, we're at 30. Another item that has come up, adjacent to Audie Murphy Park, the skaters are parking along Newport Road, blocking the bike lane. We're proposing to restripe Newport Road adjacent to Audie Murphy to bring the bike lane out and to allow parking. That should happen here in the next few weeks. We're also, while we're out and about striping, we're going to revise the striping on Hahn Road from Newport to City Hall. With the additional commercial development going on there along Newport and Hahn, there's been an increased activity in left turns into the gas station area, and there's also been an increased activity towards Yellow Basket because of the additional commercial going on there. These are traffic signal improvements that we already talked about. Public Works has also done some maintenance along Scott Road, repairing a shoulder there that has been sloughing off into the roadway. Along with the projects that we're working on, we're actively engaging with the community through the contacts that we have here during council meetings and through other requests as they come across. On July 10th, I met with the Sun City Homeowners Association to address a number of items that have existed prior to incorporation. On July 15th, I met with local residents along Holland Road that were here at our last meeting, and we have established a schedule for additional meetings to ultimately come to some conclusion on recommendations for improving traffic circulation along the Hahn Road corridor. With that, that's my Public Works update.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Can you go back to the traffic signal slide? And then I'll defer to Mr. Denver.
No, do your thing and then I'll do it.
With respect to the Aldergate Drive and Menifee Road signal, will that be installed before the school year starts back up? I'm thinking of Freedom Crest Elementary. Will that signal be in place before the students go back to school?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. Does the school district know that?
No, they do not.
Can we communicate that to them?
I will do that.
Okay.
As well with Paloma regarding the light at
Absolutely.
Bradley and
So,
Holland.
yeah, but do they know that those are even coming?
I will make sure they do.
Yeah, I think Dr. Kennedy at Menifee needs to know about the Aldergate one, and Dr. Greenberg needs to know about the Bradley one, that it's been approved, it's been funded, and just kind of give them an idea, if we can, when those things will be installed.
I will do that.
Mr. Denver?
The Newport parking, I recognize the need for parking for that beautiful park. I recognize the kids utilizing, maybe overutilizing that park. Is there not another place for parking for those kids? Isn't there a place? Here's the reason why. I can't imagine that we've just spent all this money widening Newport Road and turn a road as major as Newport and then turning part of it into a parking lot.
There is a parking lot within the park that is not utilized as well as it should be. There's poor signage that doesn't direct drivers to that parking lot. We have discussed this. There is a need right now, public safety wise, to take care of this issue. We looked at it, and we felt that this was the most expedient way to address the issue. There are some other items that I would like to talk to Robert about, because we have landscaping that's adjacent to where this parking is, and we will have to make some additional modifications there. But we felt that this was the quickest and most prudent way to solve the situation.
I disagree, and so it's up, I mean, you're the boss. You get to do what you want. But I really think that that it'd be a lot cheaper to put up signs, put out Mr. Berry and his traffic tickets. That will slow that up a lot. And if there's a problem with people knowing about an empty parking lot in there, then I think there's a thing called signage. Second, now, if that gets filled up, if you end up with a problem where you have all the parking up and down the streets on the inside of that park used and the parking lot, then I'm ready to talk about this. But I really think you're jumping into this way too quick.
I understand the comment, and we have evaluated that. We have an issue for enforcement. We are putting up signs, but no one is obeying them. Right now, I have Officer Berry very busy. I have him busy along Holland Road. I have him busy on Aldergate. I have him busy in front of the schools. There's not enough of him to go around. So I figured this was the best way, without adding additional enforcement, that we could solve the issue. But I do understand your point.
Mr. Johnson, before I call on Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually asked Jonathan to look into this. We not only have issues with folks not parking in the parking lot, but we have issues with people parking on the streets internally in Audie Murphy Ranch. And the issue with that is that's a homeowner issue area. You can do a number of things. You can give people parking stickers. You can put up signs, but they're still going to go about their business. And most notably, the most active part of this park is right in front of the skate park. And so to have folks parking there now in the bike lane is not a great safety idea. So we either enforce the parking everywhere, and like Jonathan said, run our police force really standing by at Audie Murphy Ranch, or create a solution, which I thought this seemed to be the most logical solution since they're already parking there, adjust the bike lane to the outside. We can take another look at this, but this was what we were attempting to do to create a more safer environment and to allow the parking on Newport, similar to Cal Oaks Park in Marietta. There's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit zone there. There's more than 2.5 lanes through there of traffic. So we try to do similar things to similar other areas in other cities. And secondarily, Dr. Kennedy, he does know about the light at Aldergate and Menifee. He doesn't know the timing, so we'll make sure that he does that. But we do need to get with Dr. Greenberg, because he's been calling for that light at Bradley and Holland for a very long time, and we finally got the funds to go do that, so we'll make sure we meet with him.
Thank you. I may call him in the morning, too, just to let him know that's coming. Mr. Edgerton?
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed that you spoke about speed on Holland Road.
Yes.
Mentioned the design for the Holland overpass. Perhaps it sounds counterintuitive, but is it not conceivable that once that Holland overpass is in, that might mitigate some of the speeding problems? You'll have a number of other options. At the current time, there's some frustration there because people come south from Newport. They go north from Scott in frustration to race to Holland, and they're trying to make up for their time. I would think that the Holland overpass might give you the advantage of better traffic control, but I don't know. That's your call. Speaking of that, though, where are we? The design is paid for. When do you anticipate the Holland overpass to be a reality?
It's under, as you mentioned, it is under design now. We recently had a meeting. Rafael Martinez, the Assistant Director of Public Works, is seeing to that project. And Rafael, do you have a quick update that you can share?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Currently, we're in design. We anticipate finishing up design in approximately 1 year, at which time we are fully funded for that project. We will then, at that time, go out to bid, and construction schedule is looking at approximately about 1.5 years for the construction of that.
No, Raphael, when you say fully funded, do you mean the design is fully funded, or do you mean the overpass is fully funded?
Both. Both.
That is great news, because that's what I told some people this morning.
Well, good. I'm glad your information was correct, sir.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Just one last thing. I mentioned this to you before, and I talked to Rob about it earlier. The right there at Wheatfield Park, where the Woodcrest comes out facing Wheatfield Park, there is a bend that comes to that street. As you try to make a left-hand turn, you have to get out into the street, and then you're looking to your left, and then you're looking over to your right. I got to assume it's a matter of time before somebody gets whacked, either from the right or the left. One of the things that Rob mentioned, which might be helpful, is red striping, so that when you turn left, at least cars don't block your view.
Right.
The bend would still be there. I do understand the difficulty you're having because you have a stop sign
Right.
just between there and the road that goes through the college.
La Piedra.
And
La
then-
Piedra there.
Right, and then another stop sign down at Holland. But I've had a number of complaints. I travel it myself.
Okay.
So
Well,
I think it bears having a look at.
We'll take a look at it. We'll do a site distance analysis, and that'll determine how far we need to paint the right red curb to keep it clear. So Raphael's already made a note of that, and in my next update, I'll have an update on that.
Good, thanks. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. August?
It's kind of an important issue, and I'm going to address this to Raphael. And I heard Jonathan, he said it perfectly tonight, and said it better than I have on a lot of occasions, because I've been asked this question quite a bit. And you said, I can't get people to slow down in this city. And I can't either. And I don't think anybody can except the motorcycle officer or the police. What I'm asking, is that the answer we have to give to people for the time being? You mentioned accidents at the corner of Chambers and Marietta. It's a four-way stop sign. Somebody said tonight somebody runs through a stop sign and causes a crash. How are we responsible for that? How do we stop that?
Well, exactly. We can't engineer good driving. That's only through enforcement, so.
What's the answer? The solution is more police?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm tired of it down my street. I live on
Yeah.
Melvin.
Okay.
When school starts, I can't get out
Okay.
my driveway.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask one question. Thanks, Stan. But what's the street that comes out of Holiday and goes on to McCall? It's not the other, I mean the one that goes south. You go out the back gate and you go to McCall. Grosse Point. I would like you to look into putting a stop sign at McCall and Grosse Point. Could you put that on the list, Raphael? That's a dangerous turn there. Yeah, so.
We are looking at other options to calm traffic, which we'll be getting with the city manager to discuss and ultimately maybe bring to the safety committee meetings.
I don't know how you slow people down either, and it's frustrating to tell people that. Well, we need more police officers. That's about all we can do. Speed bump. And last question, speed bumps on the one they mentioned over in SCCA district, speed bumps on Augusta. Are we ever going to be able to do anything about that?
Well, we are looking into traffic calming devices. Speed humps are what are typically utilized in the public right-of-way. Speed bumps, there is a difference. Typically, they're used in private parking lots and whatnot. They're the berms that you drive over that drive you nuts. But there are many traffic calming items available. And again, I'll be meeting with the city manager and bringing him a report, and we'll decide how to go from there.
Mr. Johnson and then Mr. Edgerton.
Since we mentioned more officers, our motorcycle is completely outfitted. It's here. It's waiting for one part for a radio, so I guess it's not completely outfitted. 99% August 1st, our second motor officer will be on the streets.
Nice. Mr. Edgerton?
Well, there's another option, Councilman August. It can be very controversial. They've been using them in Europe for about 40 years, and they've used them around here and in Los Angeles. And that is, you can set up cameras and they're clocked, and the person gets a traffic ticket in the mail. Bear in mind that you're going to get some blowback if you do something like that, but it is an answer other than providing police. Secondly, the bumps in the road, as I understand it from other cities, is also a concern because of a liability factor. What about those cameras? NASA's already looking at us.
I have, and Raphael has worked on projects where cameras are installed at certain intersections where you have a high rate of drivers running the red lights. There are companies that do the installation. They're a private company that you enter into an agreement with. They do the maintenance. They get a cut of the fine. And so it is an option, but there is a cost. I'll bring those options to the city manager for his review, and we'll.
Well, in the merchandising and advertising world, if people think they're being watched, in fact, if you even put a picture of an eye, it affects human behavior. It's bizarre. Maybe we should put a sign up. We're watching you. I don't know.
Well, this is Menifee, not Murrieta, and when we talk about red light cameras, and it's not on the agenda, and I don't believe Mr. Edgerton wanted you to bring a staff rep. He was just talking. I mean, generalization.
Understood.
Okay. Any other comments from council? I have one question for you, Mr. Smith, is when can we expect the I-215 through Menifee to be completed? That's the question that I get all the time. When will it be done?
It's scheduled to be done by the end of this year, by December. We help them out by agreeing to the traffic detour that allows them to accelerate the work at the bridge. I am in direct contact with them, and that reminded me of an update on the interchange that I can give you if you're interested.
Well, of course we are.
Okay, but it's by the end of the year.
Okay, so since you mentioned the Newport Road interchange.
The permits have been issued to all the utility companies to begin their work. They are ready to go. So we'll be seeing them out on the street here and there, getting ready to move their utilities.
All right. Mr. August?
Are we talking about things for the future?
We're talking about, in the context of the city engineer, infrastructure updates.
We haven't got to the last part yet, okay.
No. Does that complete your city engineer's report and Mr. Manager?
That completes the city manager's report.
All right, very well. On to future agenda items for council members.
Oh. Can I mention one, Mr. Mayor?
Of course.
We had someone from SCCA today mention the homeless problem in the core area, and it probably does exist. Is there anything we can do about that?
Well, I think if I might be so bold as to suggest that you guys talk about it in the Public Safety Committee first.
Okay.
And see what can be done, what can't be done, maybe come up with some things or not, and see what, because I know law enforcement does some things and they can't do others, so maybe it'd be good to have a Public Safety Committee discussion on it first, and then a future report.
All right.
Does that sound good? Mr. Denver?
I have several things I'd like to talk about or ask questions. I'm a little apprehensive and would feel better if I understood what's going to be happening very soon at LAFCO. I understand we're going to be talking about expanding the boundaries of Menifee, and I think that's what we're doing. But also I hear through the grapevine that our Parks and Recreation Department is trying to get the center of the west side of Menifee into their district all at the same time. Is there any reality to any of that?
So this is not on the agenda, but, and I'm sorry.
Okay,
but-
well, let me put it this way. I would like to put on the agenda a LAFCO report of what is actually going to be talked about at LAFCO in the immediate future.
Is that possible, Mr. Johnson? I know that
Absolutely.
staff was responsive to LAFCO's, and
Clarification.
and I'll get it back to you.
Second thing.
Okay, so, but hang on, please. Staff was responsive to LAFCO's questionnaire
Correct.
because we were up for our 5-year municipal services review, and that is what LAFCO is reviewing.
Correct.
And that is what has been held over. It was originally agendized for July 24th at LAFCO. It's been held over till September, correct?
That is correct.
So we have a motion and a second to have staff kind of give us an update on that at a future agenda.
If I could add one item, because I think there's where the confusion may lie. What they try to do with their municipal services review is take areas that are next to each other. If they're up for the same year of the municipal services review, they bring them together and put them on the same agenda. So when I saw the agenda, I also saw Valleywide Recreation and Park District Municipal Services Review. Since they are a Recreation and Park District or special district, they also have a Municipal Services Review. Excuse me. And so theirs is being held at the same time as ours. So on the agenda, that's why you see the LAFCO agenda has the City of Menifee and Valleywide Recreation and Park District. Now, I haven't seen the staff report, and I asked to see the staff reports before the item came. So I can't confirm nor deny your inquiry as to whether Valleywide is trying to make a further assumption of a sphere of influence. I just don't know because I don't have the report.
So we've got.
As soon as I get it, I can provide that information.
All right, thank you. And you still have the floor, Mr. Denver.
Thank you. Second thing is, I'm a little disappointed that several times I now have asked for fences to be repaired in Romoland and the Romoland sign to be put up, and I noticed that it's never on the agenda as other districts' requests are. And I wish that, one, I suspect the Romoland sign is being worked on, but I think the fences are not, and I wish that was on the agenda of future agenda items, because Romoland is part of our city too. Third thing, whatever I'm at, is satisfaction surveys. I would like to see, if I can get a second, to see that when somebody pulls a permit or has any involvement with the city over the counter, that they're handed at the same time a satisfaction survey. And when we collect up their paperwork, we ask for that satisfaction survey, and we get a copy of the summary of what that month's satisfaction rating is.
Could I clarify your motion? I certainly don't have a problem with that, providing the satisfaction report goes to the city manager and not the council, because we'll be talking about staff. And those satisfaction reports, I agree with you, Mr. Denver, are very helpful in self-correcting and helping, mitigate circumstances. I'd be concerned if it was sent to the council, because it isn't our job to have oversight over staff. That's the city manager. That'd be my only.
I'll modify my proposal to your proposal, if you'd second it. But it to be handed out with the applications and collected up and then brought to the city manager, and he at least gets a monthly report of the satisfaction of the people. Right now it's on the city website and nobody, I'll bet there isn't 15 of them collected.
I'll go along with that.
I have a second on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Edgerton?
Whoops.
You still have the floor, Mr. Denver, unless you're done.
I'm done.
All right.
Okay. I have mentioned this before, and I've received a second on it before, and I want to get this minimum lot size on the agenda, and also want to make it very clear to my colleagues. I think all of us are aware this is a complex issue. You can't impose a number of things on people who already have tentative tract maps. You were talking about a small area in the city as far as what hasn't already been designed and requested and asked for. Secondly, I think it eventually should be probably a workshop, so one appreciates it's complicated if you're talking about so many houses in a city. You can say, hey, I can multiply that times TUMP funds. That's no small amount of money. It helps us with infrastructure. But it's a one-time mitigation amount of money. If you can increase property taxes and increase the profile of the buyer, then your property tax increase and your sales tax revenues go on year after year after year. There's probably a formula there where you can reach the Goldilocks happy medium. But I get a lot of requests for why are we looking at all of these small lot sizes? Why can't we look at larger lots? And as I said, I would like to get it on the agenda for discussion. My thinking is it would probably move from there to a workshop because it is very complicated. But I simply would move to put it on perhaps the next agenda or when Mr. Furman comes back, and just as a broad general subject, and not ask for a second on that.
Well, if I may just, I mean, it's already on, you've already asked for that. It's already on our future agenda requests. It's on here. Consideration of minimum lot sizes requested on 21 May for July or as soon as possible. Discussion only, no report. And so to that extent, I would rely upon staff to bring it back because we've already asked for it. But I know that we have a special meeting on July 30th because we continued a couple of hearings. And then we have August 2nd, and then we have August 16th, or whatever the dates are.
Right.
Whatever the dates are, the 2 meetings in August. But I don't know, how soon do you want this discussion?
Next meeting?
Well, next meeting is July. I don't think that's right.
I think he meets next regular meeting.
Next
Are you
regular
talking
meeting.
August 6th?
Okay.
Mr. Manager, do you not have that scheduled or planned for that?
Yeah, just waiting to be called. We do have it scheduled for the first meeting in August.
Okay, yeah, good, all right. Yeah, Mr. August.
Yeah, I want to address Mr. Edgerton. I'm fully in support of having that discussion, but that is a very, very deep discussion. I mean, I would really like to do some preparation for that and ask some questions. And do you think it would not be better to have that at a workshop?
Well, you know, and it might be, and I think that might be the outcome of the agenda item. I don't intend to try to request all of the answers because it's a complicated one.
Very much so.
But I think to kind of get a feel from, if there's any blowback from the community, to get a feel for the council. I think there can be some misunderstanding on the part of the council. If you start going out saying, well, let's have a minimum lot size, say of 15,000 square feet, which is fine. I would support that. Well, are you talking about a moratorium? Are you talking about things that are already in the pipeline? At that point, you know, you've got a real fight on your hands. So what you're looking for is something that works, and that probably is imposed on very little property that we have left in the city.
How would the staff prepare a report on that, or they wouldn't?
I think it needs to be an agenda item so that we can get some direction from the council as to where we want to go from here. We can't get into it now, but I think Mr. Furman, if I'm not mistaken, is in favor of that.
Sure.
And
So am I.
and I think that historically, this council on that issue seems to be lined up almost antagonistically between a 3-2 vote. And I'm not so sure if we had clarification that we could not get cooperation among the council, and that would be what I would be trying to achieve.
I don't think it's an antagonistic vote or a discussion because we unanimously approved the general plan by 5-0 which is what we're currently operating under from a land use standpoint. So if you guys want to have a future discussion about modifying that, that's fine. I think that's healthy, no problem. I would support the discussion. What the outcome of that discussion is remains to be seen, but Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mr. Deputy Mayor, just want to make certain the request was for an agenda item topic with no staff report. It was just a discussion that you were going to lead, which could ultimately lead to where staff would need to come back with. I think I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Mr. Johnson, what might be helpful if we knew what amount of property has not been determined already, and I don't think that's a lot of property left in the city. And I think that's a number you can readily come up with.
Yes, we can do that.
And
we can come up with maps and actually show the locations as well.
And secondly, staff might come up not with some recommendations, because that would be premature, but perhaps some questions, both positive and negative, as to what might be the implications that council might want to look at. I think we need a workshop, because I think there is a mathematical answer in some instances to this difference between gaining TUMP funds on maximum density and the ongoing amount of money that you would get from higher property taxes and higher sales tax from people who had a higher ability to make purchases. But those are all things that I think would probably be dealt with in a workshop. To me, it is something that should be evaluated, and I think it will take some time and it'll be long range. It's not something I think that you're going to resolve in a meeting.
So for
That's
the
not my
August,
intention.
so for the August 6th meeting, it's going to be a discussion led by you that we will ultimately have for a workshop that will then be bringing back things. Okay,
Right.
just want to make.
And if you come up with any
getting clarity.
brilliant ideas in the meantime, which you think we might want to add to the discussion,
okay,
please bring it back in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other council member requests? All right, very good. Hearing none. Mr. Johnson, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, then I am going to adjourn tonight's meeting in honor of the Stay family, who was brutally slain in Texas, and whose grandparents live in the beautiful city of Menifee. And I won't, obviously won't say where, but they both live here, and a tragedy that hit close to home. And so I adjourned the meeting tonight in honor of the Stay family.